Hi, this is Kirby Sommers, and I welcome you to my true crime podcast. It is August 1st. Can you believe it? This is part three of um my deep dives into Meghan Markle. Uh Pretty much the question is, was Meghan Markle, is Meghan Markle a Jeffrey Epstein girl? So part three. I posted on my Twitter. Oh, before I get started, I want to thank everyone who has sent in a contribution. That's very generous of you. Everyone who has joined my Patreon. Again, that's generous of you. I have an ongoing Ask Me Any questions that I don't necessarily see on Twitter. And this way I can answer you personally. So please like the video. Please subscribe if you have not subscribed. So I posted on Twitter, I believe on Saturday, a couple of photographs taken from a trip that Prince Andrew took in 2001. Now, the people who made that possible and the people that basically accompanied him, and I'm going to give you a list of people who were on the yacht. But pretty much, I think maybe some of you remember, and if you don't, let me be the first to tell you that the minute that Prince Andrew got his divorce, he was already friendly with Jeffrey Epstein because of Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell became his fixer. That has been widely reported because, as you know, Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested in January of 2020, and Prince Andrew has been in the news uh, for well over a decade, based on the allegations by Virginia Giuffre, uh, who was one of Jeffrey Epstein's, let me see, trafficked victims. And so, the fact that Prince Andrew has been in the news, Ghislaine Maxwell has been in the news, and because Prince Andrew has really not had a great reputation. I mean, he was photographed with Courtney. Courtney, I just woke up and have not had my cup of coffee, but Kurt Cobain's widow, asking pretty much asking her to let him come over for tea at 1 o'clock in the morning. Um, and so when he sort of was taken under the wing of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, they were his fixers. And that's who accompanied him on this trip to Thailand in 2001. Now, the trip was frowned upon by the Queen, who was not happy that suddenly, not only is her son being called again a playboy, because before he married Fergie, he was known as Randy Andy, as you all know, but suddenly he became a playboy prince, partying with people like Jeffrey Epstein, like Ghislaine Maxwell, who had her own reputation for being fast and loose and, having questionable friends. Her father, as you know, was Robert Maxwell, a spy. And in fact, Tom Bauer wrote a book on, I think he wrote 3 books on Maxwell. Maxwell sued him for telling the truth. And Bauer won. And Bauer is a pretty reliable source for uh reaching out, let's say in the case of his new book, Revenge. to Meghan Markle's father, he said he spoke to at least 80 sources. There's some things he may not have talked about, and that's that 2001 trip taken by Prince Andrew on this yacht. There are just these two photographs I put up there. So he is shown speaking with let me just get a couple of names here. One of Meghan Markle's really good friends, Marcus. I'm going to try to leave some of the last names out of this. However, Ghislaine Maxwell was on the trip. Jeffrey Epstein was on the trip. Meghan Markle was on the trip. Markle was not known to anyone literally till about 2016. She was not in any gossip column. She wasn't talked about. She wasn't a big enough B or C actress for anyone to say anything about her. And so it is my understanding she was taken on this trip by Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein, at which time she was introduced to Andrew. Now, the talk, and it has become really much more than talk, is that before she ever met Prince Harry, she was indeed someone who partied hardy with Playboy Prince Andrew. So before Harry, there was Andrew. But there were a lot of other people. So I just want to go over the list of people who were on the yacht. Now, she's not photographed in those two photographs, but I do understand through a source that mainstream media has a photograph of Meghan on the yacht with Jeffrey Epstein, with Ghislaine Maxwell, with Prince Andrew, and with her pal from the Soho house. The other people that were on board, and I have a list here, is model Erica Baxter, who lived with singer Jason Donovan while he was, he had a terrible, allegedly, addiction to cocaine and ecstasy. Let's see. Also on the trip was Jenny Frost, who at the time in 2001 was the newest member of the pop group Atomic Kitten. And she was pictured half naked on the yacht and told the Sunday journalists when questioned about it that we had a wicked time. And then she said, I had no hesitation in going topless in front of Prince Andrew. Why should I? The fact is, I didn't want to get strap marks on my body while I was sunbathing. Jenny, who was 22, dated soccer star David Beckham. She denies ever taking drugs. Now, here's the thing. There is a thread with Meghan Markle, as you probably know, and David Beckham. It goes back many, many years, over 20 years. There's a lot that I will unpack in another episode because Meghan surely has been busy dating people and doing things in order to marry up. I want to take a little break here and remind you that in Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's, what shall we call it? Ring. I'll call it a ring for now. See it as a continuation of something that we've had and something that continues to present day, even though Jeffrey Epstein is allegedly dead And Ghislaine Maxwell is definitely in jail. For those of you who think she's not in jail, she is in jail. So also on board was Norman D. Keith, who was 28 at the time. Her best friend is Tara Palmer Tompkinson, who is no longer with us. She died pretty young. She had a terrible cocaine addiction. And but the woman basically at the center together this group of women to be on the yacht. We now know what these women are called. They're called yacht girls, right? There are other names for them, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on a yacht. It's just to be company and arm candy and quote playthings, end quote, for the rich and famous and for those who can afford it and for those who are being blackmailed, because we know all along that Epstein and Maxwell were not just being friendly to Prince Andrew, who Ghislaine knew him from the time she was. And so these two, like these people are people who just suck up to more important people to get something out of them, obviously. At the time that that photograph was taken of them on the yacht, Ghislaine had already been with Andrew 8 trips around the world in 2001 alone. That's a lot of partying. Let me just continue to tell you who else was on that, and then I'm going to just go back. So, I think Jackie Hamilton Smith, she is the 31-year-old daughter of Lord Colwyn. That's Colwyn. And, all of these people, again, allegedly were, having cocaine-fueled parties. She was described as fun-loving. She's married to actor Sean Pertwee, but used to date fellow Nylon Gang member Nellie Hopper. And again, this is in 2001, right? So Jenny Frost is the 22-year-old singer with the pop group Atomic Kitten. As I said, she's the former fiance of convicted armed robber and drug addict Paul Greenhalgh. He became friendly with disgraced property tycoon and serial sex offender Owen Ostin after they shared a cell. So Jenny denies taking the drugs, but says that meeting Andrew was wicked. And then I think there was Nellie Hopper. She was 37, a regular at Brown's nightclub at London's West End, which became notoriously known as a drug dealing establishment. His model girlfriend, Erica Baxter, lived with the singer and former Neighbor star Jason Donovan while he was in the grip of a terrible drug addiction to cocaine and ecstasy. So, yeah, so, yeah, I just want to get my thoughts together here as to how long I want to make this and what I want to share with you. I obviously want to share as much as I can with you. So again, that is a trip that Meghan Markle was on. But again, as I said earlier, very few people knew about her. She had a very low profile in the UK and in the US. She wasn't part of the celebrity gossip group. So, although a couple of papers, especially in the UK, covered that information and that trip of 2001 that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein organized, paid for by another wealthy man who I will go into at a later point. And again, with a lot more connections to Jeffrey Epstein doing certain things. The whole thing is it's just a bunch of the same people. But, nobody was going to write about Meghan Markle. There was just nothing really to write about. Now, when I did part two of this series on her, I was like, she's been married, but I think she's been married twice. Actually, she has been married twice. The first husband was Joe Giuliano, and he's apparently an entertainment attorney, and then that may have been annulled because the parents became involved. And although I believe at the time he may have helped her for some things in the entertainment industry. But again, I want to insert here that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell did the same thing for some of the girls. And I'm going to call them girls because they were below the age of 17. One was at the tail end of the age of 13. There were some who were younger. A lot of the girls that ended up with Epstein came to him through what I call feeders. One of these feeders is Jean-Luc Brunel, who also, surprise, surprise, hung himself while in jail. When you start seeing the same thing happen over and over again, like the lead detective in the Epstein case, Joe Ricari, he died suddenly after a very fast battle with cancer. There's a long list of people who have died. I don't believe it's a coincidence. I think people are being murdered. And things are being made to look like suicide. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. So far, all of the stuff, the majority of the stuff that I've discovered has turned out to be true. But people have been murdered. And I will, before I finish this podcast, tell you what the end game is, because some of you are asking, well, what's the end game for this? So she was married to this guy, Joe Giuliano, and then she married Trevor. So she married Trevor. And it was a very hush hush marriage. Trevor Engelson, who's again in Hollywood. He's a producer. He got her a couple of bit parts. She was even in one of his things. He's writing a tell-all book, and it sounds like she's terrified, and she's having some of her friends write books on her behalf. Now, I do want to say that when she met Harry, it was again a pay to play situation, as I indicated on Twitter yesterday. And they decided to kind of like stick together. Her blog, her Instagram, all of the photos she put up there advertising, sort of like company, that kind of thing. Everything was scrubbed. But when they were doing the scrubbing, they also added new information, disinformation. That is, that's counterintelligence type stuff. Because obviously the people who did that were MI5, MI6, who scrubbed the internet on behalf of Prince Harry. But a lot of the people who have kept an eye on the royal family and on Princes Harry and his life kept photographs and kept up with what was happening with him. And so many people still have screen images that existed from that time. The misinformation is put there to confuse people. So one of those things that are misinformation type things is her age. She's 45. There's misinformation now showing that she's 40. I had somebody question me on that, and I had to put out a tweet about misinformation. If somebody goes through the trouble of just scrubbing the internet of all of their things, then always know that whatever you find when you're Googling is going to 99.9% of the time be counter intelligence stuff placed so that you can find it, because normal people don't think about the devious things done to uh you know kind of like change your perspective. And that's why they have hired a PR agency that is in fact connected to Harvey Weinstein, that is in fact connected to the Clintons, that is connected to Gloria Steinem, who is a CIA asset, that is connected to a lot of these people that are connected to intelligence. So there is an agenda. What's the agenda? It's I hate to call it what it is, but it is what it is. It's the New World Order. What's the agenda ultimately? It's to have all of us, you and me, and our friends, unless they happen to be part of the elite, and in which case, if you have elitists or elite friends, I should say, be careful, because really what they want is for us to be the slaves and for them to rule over us. Hence, the lax situation around the borders, hence why we have some of the things that we have today. I'm not going to mention what that is, but I think that you get the gist of it. And I mean, that's pretty much it. What I do want to warn you about or caution you is that sometimes there will be sort of friction put in front of us, such as the Prince Harry situation with Meghan. Harry clearly knows the story. There's no way that he was going to marry someone without his family having looked into her 100%. And Harry, he was brought up as a prince. He had to be taught, as was his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, had to be taught about the evils of the world. Now, granted, the royal family, from where we sit, are part of the evils of the world, right? They're part of that elite group who wish to, they did it their entire, I mean, they've reigned forever, so they're part of that group that want to continue to reign over us. However, to get back to my point, sometimes a false battle will be placed in front of us so that we believe that there's good and evil, and that it's only Meghan Markle who's evil, when in fact it might be the whole royal family. But if you focus on Meghan Markle, and eventually she's going to be fine, because she has plenty of trolls. I've noticed. I had no clue about who the Sussex squad was until these very immature sounding people, so I have to think that they're very young and they have perhaps nothing better to do, came onto my Twitter account. So, I block everyone. I think I've blocked more people than I have followers. However, be cautious about these issues that are presented to us to take our mind off what is actually going on in the world. So while, yes, I encourage you to give me your thoughts about the information I've shared with you, the fact that Andrew and Meghan Markle were introduced by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and that, yes, I believe that Markle comes from Jeffrey Epstein territory. that too is connected to intelligence. Alex Acosta, when he was investigating Jeffrey Epstein in 2005, 2006, 2007, he was basically the federal attorney for the District of Florida. He was told to back off Jeffrey Epstein because, quote, he belonged to intelligence. And this is after he wrote a 53-page indictment. And there were at least 40 victims, minor girls, who were ready to testify. He was told to back off. He handed it back to the state level. They did that so that they could then just push this under the rug. We really were never supposed to see the tip of the Epstein iceberg, but we did. So keep that in mind, that this is all part of a larger network. It's not just Meghan Markle and her PR team. It is a much larger and broader group. And sometimes what they throw in front of us is misdirection. Okay. So use your judgment. Keep your eyes open to other things that are happening in the world, not via mainstream media. Please, mainstream media is not our friend. Do your own research, and that does not mean Googling. It means, I'm going to have to probably do like a whole podcast and give you some tips on how to ferret out real information. But it means interviewing people. It means, being on the ground. It means checking your sources. It means not relying on the word of one person, but trying to find an alternate person who is perhaps not known to the first source, to see if you hear the same thing twice. It takes a lot of time. As you know, I do this every single day, every day. But you know what? I really have amazing followers. I am so lucky that I have met such an incredible group of people. And so what I do it with love. I do it because I too was involved as someone who was entrapped into an 8-year situation with one of the men who was part of the circle. And so I happen to not only have experience dealing with, let's say, the pushback and all of that stuff, but I have experience in being able to connect the dots, because prior to my starting on the Jeffrey Epstein thing in July of 2019 on Twitter and through my books, I was for years and years and years connecting the dots to the mysterious things that were happening to me. So, the stuff that Ronan Farrow wrote about, Black Cube, Rose McGowan, I had already been there, done that. I knew all about it. So like it's easier for me because I have a lot more experience, but I'm here hopefully passing that on to you so that you too can look at the world, as one of my favorite followers says, Laura, with eyes wide open, not wide shut. With that, please like the video, subscribe. There's more to come. Okay, have a nice day. Bye.